right, everyone's here in studio tonight. Andew, Chantal and Bruce. And we're starting on Tom Mulcair and the NDP, specifically this remark he made yesterday after his caucus meeting in Edmonton.
People are so tired of what's going on in Ottawa right now, the partisan attacks and, frankly, the platitudes, the empty phrases. We're putting concrete, solid ideas on the table, ideas that meet Canadians' expectations from the next government, and we are ready.
The government in waiting strategy, all with policy coming too. What do we make of that?
I don't think that's actually the strategy. That might be the nice, brave words to wrap around it. I don't think it is on the cards for the NDP at this point. Maybe things will happen in the next year, but to form a government, I think they're much more concerned about what the Liberals are doing to them and have continued to do to them. I think if you look at some of the policies that they've begun to talk about, for example, a daycare plan like the Quebec one, $7 a day, that even Quebec is starting to back away from, I think that smacks to me much more of trying to hold on to the base, trying to cause some trouble for the Liberals on their left flank, but mostly to keep Justin Trudeau from poaching voters from the NDP.
Chantal.
I think they are. I'm not saying they'll succeed, but I think they're trying to set themselves up for a Trudeau fall. In other words, if Trudeau does falter, as they hope, expect, pray that he will in the campaign, they will be standing there with a mainstream platform. So far, what they've put in it, I'm not sure will do wonders for them. It's not that I don't believe in a childcare program along the Quebec lines, but my kids were toddlers when it was first promised by the Conservatives, and they're now parents. So I'm not sure that there are very many voters out there who are willing to believe a childcare promise from anyone.
Where are you on this?
Well, I think Mr. Mulcair has been doing a pretty good job in the last week or so of getting more share of voice. I think he needs to do something to shake his situation up. His party's trailing in the polls and consistently trailing in the polls. I think when he talks about prepared to lead, we're ready to govern, I don't know that that test has been passed by his party yet. I think a lot of Canadians are still not convinced that that's the case. What he's trying to do is make the case that Justin Trudeau isn't prepared to govern. And he said some things that were more kind of direct and assertive and even aggressive than in that clip. And I think the challenge that he's got as he does that is, will he come off looking more prepared or maybe just more partisan than Justin Trudeau?
I think the other thing is that what Trudeau and the Liberals have been trying to do is to be almost center-right in their policies, but sort of count on his kind of warm and fuzzy image to prevent that from looking too right-wing. I think what the NDP wants to do is to say, look, maybe the Liberals are going to claim that we're the ones to toss out Harper, but if all you do is replace them with the same policies, then for a left-wing voter, what have you really changed? So I think they want to try and highlight and accentuate some of the policy differences, also partly because they're on better turf talking about policy than they are comparing leaders. Mulcair just does not have the popular appeal that Trudeau does.
The thing is, you have to believe that they filled up on so-called left-wing voters in 2011. They need to attract other voters. And at this juncture, I'm not seeing that telling Liberals that Justin Trudeau is like Harper is going to work, frankly. If Stephen Harper were a more middle-of-the-road kind of conservative in the public perception, it might work. But at this point, a lot of people are looking at Stephen Harper as the most conservative prime minister that they've ever seen. It's really hard to, find legs for the argument that Justin Trudeau and Stephen Harper, it's like 25 cents and a quarter. So
any path to victory for Thomas Mulcair finds Justin Trudeau smack in the middle of it. There's no question that that's a problem, and to some degree that has to do with the way that people are reacting to these two personalities. But it's not only that. And I think that when Mr. Mulcair says change that's ready and will provide a progressive government, he's forgetting about the fact that for a lot of mainstream centrist voters, they're not sure what to take from that word progressive in that context. And what they know about the Liberal Party is that it may not look like it's prepared to govern in the sense of having a lot of seats in the House of Commons right now, but they know that brand has governed successfully at different times in the past, and they don't know that about the NDP.
What about the basic strategy of laying out a policy? I know, Andrew, you don't think they're going to lay out a lot, but let's take him at his word. He's going to lay a lot of policy in the next little while. That has always looked like a risky strategy for a lot of parties in the past because they become the target then.
Yeah. But I'll come back to this point. I think the battle for the center voter for the NDP is over. I think that's lost to them. I think they had that chance for a year or two after the last election. I think it's over. I think what it's now about is accentuate policy differences with the Liberals. And no, they're not going to get a centrist voter to cross all the way, but they can absolutely say to left Liberal voters, we're the real deal. Trudeau is too busy trying to poach Conservative voters. We're the ones who will actually stand up for the issues that you count on.
The truth is, though, that the party that needs to lose votes to someone to lose power is called the Conservative Party. So, and actually, the NDP can hang on to its votes outside Quebec, and if Trudeau can poach Conservative votes, he can win an election, and then Quebec becomes key. Everyone's betting that Quebecers so want Harper out that if they think that one is more likely to beat Harper than the other, they might switch. I'm not sure that that's true, but the problem with the NDP is they don't need just to hold Quebec, they need to grow. And if Andrew is right, they're not going to grow getting centrist voters, then how do they grow? And if Trudeau falters along that reasoning, then it's Harper that goes back up.
All right, I want to switch topics so we can get a good run at this one, because of the fascination for a lot of people in what's happening in Scotland. A week tonight, we'll know how the Scots see their future, in or out of the United Kingdom. Some polls suggest a stunner. Not all, some. And that's got a lot of people talking. Here's the question that Scots will be asked. Should Scotland be an independent country? We know in this country, past referendums, there's always been a debate about the question. It was too long and involved, wasn't clear. This is pretty clear.
By Canadian standards, it's very clear. I've read analyses in Britain when they were talking about the question that said that even this question kind of invites a yes, that it would have been a more neutral question to say, should Scotland remain part of the United Kingdom or should it be an independent country? But certainly, yes, it is more clear and less convoluted than anything we've been privileged to have.
Bruce, you've been involved in the background and past questions being framed and how to make a decision on what exactly to ask. What's your take on that one?
Well, I think it's a clean question. I think that these debates often turn on the way on what people eventually conclude the question really means. And so it's helpful that the question is relatively clean. I think the case can be made that Andrew does, that there's a slight tilt to it, but ultimately people hear the arguments over time, and that's what happens. And the evidence over many jurisdictions, many years, many petitions is that no sides are more likely to win than yes sides, because it's easier for people to start feeling enthusiastic about a change, and then as they get closer to the moment when they mark a ballot,
What's
to
the
worry.
data on that? In terms of the history of referendum questions?
Last time I
winning?
checked, it was about 7 out of 10 ballots were decided in favor of the no side. And that's really because that kind of aversion to risk kicks in. And as we can see what's going on in Scotland now, who knows what will happen, but the last 4 polls, I think, that I saw today all showed a narrowing in the direction of maybe we don't want to do this. And I don't find that surprising, given the economic risks that are being talked about by the UK.
Does this have the possibility of renewing the debate that we thought was at least calmed and sleeping at the moment in Quebec?
Well, I certainly don't believe in referendum fever by example and sovereignty fever by example. So I don't for a second believe that if the Scots vote yes, Quebecers will suddenly say, oh, gee, we just told the PQ to pack off 6 months ago and now we would want them back and please, let's vote yes. What I find interesting about a yes result is that for us, at relatively no expense to our lives, we would get to watch what happens to the black and white versions of reality that are being presented in real life for 18 months. Now, there are people like Stéphane Dion, to name someone who's not a hardcore sovereigntist, who thinks that even a yes victory followed by those 18 months of negotiations could go a longer way to turn people off independence in this country than to encourage them to go down that road. I don't know. For sure, as a journalist, I'd be curious to see them do the experiment without me having to live through it.
We would basically be doing in real time what we were speculating about with Chantal's book. I think I agree that there's no necessary correlation between a yes and Scotland suddenly revives separatist fervor in Quebec. What worries me, it's a slim chance, but if it passed in the yes and they were able to negotiate a speedy and calm and orderly transition, it would certainly give ammunition to the sovereignist point in Quebec that, well, you people are all just telling scare stories. Actually, look how easily it went in Scotland. I don't think that actually would be the case. I think when you look at the issues that they have to resolve there, like whether you keep the pound or not, the nuclear deterrent, the debt, all these extraordinarily vexed things, I think you would most likely get into a morass there that would actually be a very cautionary tale and would hopefully scare off more people.
As this country went through its referendums in Quebec and the national referendums, we were very sensitive about people from outside saying anything about how they felt about it. The Prime Minister, Stephen Harper, was asked what he felt, and he basically indicated, you know, they should be voting no, which prompted this response from the First Minister in Scotland, Alex Salmond. The Foreign Office has asked everyone, and their auntie, I guess that was Prime Minister Harper, to come out and back the union. It's a sign of a campaign in disarray. So it's kind of a polite way of saying, you know, back off.
Well, I think he's probably right as to how that comment materialized. I think that the Prime Minister was actually fairly constrained in his remarks. I think he went on to say that it's not for us to decide and that sort of thing. And so he did what he did, and he did it for the reasons that are suggested there. But I don't think it will have that much of an impact. I do think it's fascinating for us to watch this because it feels a little bit like we're watching a replay of a debate that happened here, only with different accents. And I do think there are more fundamentally different things about it. I don't think that the history of constitutional wrangling that led to some of the divisiveness in Canada is present there. And I think the economic factors are quite different there as well. We're talking about economies that are extraordinarily closely linked, and people are really aware of those linkages in a way that they're not sometimes in Quebec and the rest of Canada because of the language barrier, among other things.
Similarities, differences?
I'm more interested in the differences. I believe that the things that they are doing differently, agreeing on the question, agreeing on the threshold, agreeing that there will be negotiations, all these things, they are doing better than we are in the sense that at least, you know, if as you look at a possible yes, there are so many less unknowns. I also find it interesting that it's not the identity issue, but it's more the ethnically based nationalism issue that is not very central to what is being said there. I was looking at it this week, and it was kind of a, you know, quipping, but it looked to me like the yes tent in Scotland is more like the NDP coalition in Quebec than it is like the PQ and the Charter or the Bloc and the let's do this. And I think that a lot of Parti Québécois people are looking at this thinking, yes, it's easier to unite Quebecers around so-called progressive values than to continue down this cul-de-sac that has said, you know, we are ourselves, so we will not let our identity be diluted by having all this diversity and ostentatious religious signs. So I suspect it's going to encourage the PQ to think out of the box that they put themselves in over the past 5 years.
You know, Andrew, you talked about all the questions that would follow a yes vote, like what happens to the currency and others. Here's another one. Watch this. You all know what this is. It's the Union Jack. Yeah. I watched an item on BBC the other night asking the question, what happens to the Union Jack, the iconic flag, right? Which is made up partly of the flag of Scotland.
Yes.
So what happens? Does it get pulled out? Does the flag change? You can't call it the United Kingdom anymore?
Well, a lot of things are going to change even with a no. And that's, I mean, if it's a close vote, as it undoubtedly will be, you're going to see devolution not just to Scotland, but to Ireland, to Northern Ireland, to Wales, to parts of England. I mean, they've got this, they're trying to make this transition from this unitary state with several nations in it to a federation. And that's going to be very hard from the Canadian example. That'll be very hard for them to work out, but they're going to spend the next several years, if not decades, working on it.
Well, we're looking forward to next Thursday night, 7 days from now, when the result will just be fresh for all of us to talk about. Thank you all.